Hi, I'm Kim Lincoln for Soul Talk with Mindful Models. I am a spiritual teacher. I help people to integrate their mind, their body, and their spirit. And this is my work now. I came into this work from a professional dance career, which was followed by a professional modeling career of 15 years. Beginning with the dance, I was 18 when I joined a dance company. And by the time I was 26, I had been in a car accident, and that suddenly ended my career. I could no longer dance at the capacity I had been, and I needed to work and support myself. And from the time I had been 4, I had been dancing. And so with the ending of that came a real identity crisis, a kind of existential crisis. I really had no sense of myself outside of what I knew as a dancer. So it goes that people in the industry suggested that I continue with the movement and said, why don't you get into commercials and runway? And at that time they had begun petite modeling. So I got an agent, I began with runway work, and that led to commercials, then the print work, commercial and fashion. I did hand modeling, bit parts of movies, and you name it. For 15 years, I supported myself well in this career. Through the career, though, it was suggested by my talent agent that I take voice lessons. And when I began the voice lessons, everything started changing. The teacher gave me an exercise that she called the full body voice, and it comes all the way from the pelvic floor up. And I had this high little squeaky voice at the time that was cut off at my neck. And when I began practicing, all this emotion began arising in me. And all those places I'd created tension and locked down and put away, feelings I didn't want to remember, started surfacing really fast. And when I practiced overwhelming sadness and grief, and I had no content for it, and it wasn't relevant to now. So my agent, who had referred me to the teacher, she and the teacher had this other teacher who was a spiritual guide, and that's who I began studying with. That work changed my life, and that's the work I now teach. But in order to teach that, we have to become that. And it's a journey. It's a journey for all of us. So I began to realize in the performing arts, the stage and the theater, I was projecting out, right? And so I had this gigantic self, right? On stage, a big presence. But I had to bring all of that energy into a more contained space so that I could begin to feel that more inner. And when I began to have more containment, I began to have contact with the most inner self, the beloved, the sacred lover, right? Our true self. And when that began to awaken, that's when my modeling career took off. And so the more I could be all of me wherever I was, the more everything expanded, right? And my career expanded from that. But with that came a certain responsibility. And I began to see, was all of me congruent with all of what I was doing? And it's like I did a cigarette ad, for instance, that was on billboards and magazine pages, full, page ads, a one-day shoot. And I could buy a car with the earnings from that, right? And both of my parents died of lung cancer. So that weighed heavy on me. And I began to really consider, what was I selling, right? Was I congruent with what I was selling? So there were some kinds of ads I really felt in alignment with, and others I didn't. And there were some situations that I hadn't awakened to yet that were unsafe, that I began to have to consider to advocate for myself, for my own safety, because what was happening in that commercial or that ad could be dangerous to my life. In the beginning, I didn't speak up, but over time, as I began to integrate self and self more, I began to realize I couldn't afford to do that. Like, no matter how much I was paid, it wasn't worth it, the cost of the risk of my life, right? I mean, there was one where a car did a 360-degree screech stop, just spun and stopped within really an inch and a half of my toes. And then I gracefully opened the door and stepped in, right? Without a care in the world. And it was a great commercial. It could have cost my life. And not only that, I had no idea that's what I was stepping into going onto the set. So I had to learn to use my voice to tell my agent, hey, did you know this was hazardous? He's like, heck no, right? And so both of us learned, first of all, he asked better questions, and I had to advocate for myself. So as time went on, in the beginning, I took all the work I could get. And toward the end of those 15 years, my window of what I was willing to do just began to narrow a bit more. The ads became more conservative and, family-friendly ads and all of that. But I still was weighing considerations around the products. Another part of the industry I'd like to bring up here that we can all bring consciousness to was what I saw happen with talent and animals. And the animals can't advocate for themselves. And I really saw things I wish I didn't see. And it was really painful. So I would like to see more humanity come for the creatures that can't speak. And there's been a lot done in that way. I'm not knocking it, but there are certain individuals that don't have considerations. And I wish at the time I had spoken out more, right? But I lived so much in fear right? It's a kind of industry that if you make trouble, you don't get work. And I would like to see more ethics come into the workplace, and they are, but I would like to see more. And also the consciousness of ourself as a person, what is happening to us. Runway, it's fast, you get heated up, you're putting on clothing that's been freshly dyed, and with the warmth of your skin and all those fresh dyes, we're absorbing those chemicals and the pesticides that preserve the fabric in the warehouses, right? Um, we wear a lot of makeup under camera. We get painted, truly, and paint is reapplied and it looks gorgeous and we're absorbing it. Then we have thousands of candle watts of lighting that's baking that makeup into our skin. And so, as a model, as talent, we have to detox. We have to take care of ourselves, and good nutrition and extra good nutrition and extra good self-care is imperative to literally survive the industry. And so consciousness and wakefulness is really, really important. So from that, over time, it just became apparent I needed to begin the next phase of my life. So as I phased out of the industry, I began teaching, and I taught through the industry too, because it's a season on, season off kind of work, and you make a lot when you make it, and then I would have my teaching on the side, and I had classes that were beauty within and beauty without. And I also taught movement classes, yoga and stretch classes. So as time went on, then I began to phase out of that, and my work matured into the work that I now do. And the picture you'll see on Mindful Models was me in my modeling career. And I'm much older now, and I still feel that young. And you know, this is some time later. So the work I teach now is really deeply rooted in our spiritual nature and our authenticity. It's opening the conversation between the ego of our conditioned self and the unconscious that lives in the body, and the spirit of the divine I amness, that light of our being that illuminates our soul. And so my work is the marriage of that. I have a website, www.kimlincoln.com, and then my school, Terrain of Essence Teachings.com. I have weekend workshops, year-long intensives, 3-year-long intensive trainings, and then practitioner training groups. So I have a lot going on with my school, and I now have online classes. Those aren't advertised as much. So if you just go to one of those websites, to the contact page, and connect with me, I can let you know what online classes I have going on. It'll be a lot of presencing work, self-awareness work, and learning to trust our truth, trusting ourselves, right? And from that, we can live authentically. So I have a book that I published last year. It's called Holy Here with an H, Holy You with a W and one L, Discovering Your Authentic Self. So Holy Here, Holy You, Discovering Your Authentic Self. That's on Amazon. And I have another book that will be coming out the end of this year called Soul Power. So I look forward to meeting you sometime, and thank you for listening, and thank you, Mindful Models. May this world be a better place for all. Thank you.